Good evening, Shikha, and it's really great honor to finally find you here on screen together after we have come to know each other for a year now through the ECI workshop which we conducted. And I'm really grateful that you have agreed to be interviewed for this research on women in architecture, where I'm trying to work on the life of women, focusing on the womanhood and how that revolves around the architecture profession. And part of the work is basically called autoethnography. And so it's your biography, and which I'm trying to write and looking at my own life and reflecting upon it as an author. So that will be a kind of, I'm going to relate with, oh, this also happens, and this also happened with another architect. It also happened with me. So I'm going to bring that little nuances in the work. And there are simple questions about your life and going through the architectural journey. And I hope you are fine with this conversation. I'm going to try to keep it easy for both of us. And I hope you are also agreeing to get it recorded and put it in the YouTube and also eventually publish it. And thank you again for agreeing for this conversation.
Sure. Good evening, Mansee. It's nice to be with you, and I have no problem if you want to do this recording. It's my pleasure to be part of this publication that you are planning to do on women in architecture. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks. We will actually try to take you back to your high school time. And I would like to know how it was during your high school, in the family, in the school, and what actually led you to decide to join architecture. Were you just flowing into architecture, or were there some inspirations or some pushing? Or what was it in the high school that brought you to architecture?
Well, I mean, in high school, I had absolutely no intention of being, an architect. I wasn't even aware of what an architect is. So it's just, I had my specialization as biology, and my father always used to call me doctor, right when I was a child. So it was, in my brain that I had to be a medical doctor, But then suddenly in 9th, 10th standard, and I was in Rajasthan board in Jaipur, and they either you can take biology or you can take mathematics. It wasn't like the other.
Yes, in our time.
So suddenly, I just felt, because I used to talk to my peer group and friends and all. So I just realized, why am I stuck with biology? I want to experiment with something new. So that's when I just decided to switch my subject, and I took mathematics, which a lot of people said that would be very complicated, but I could manage 11th, 12th, and I fared very well. And when it was time for giving entrance, then obviously with mathematics, it's engineering. So I applied for various engineering, things like Pilani and the MNIT Jaipur, and I got admission in both places. And this was just the architecture, SPA architecture admission was open at that time. Like there was a call for the entrance exam, and I thought, why not? Like somebody suggested that this is another entrance exam, and at that time you're trying to get do everything. So I didn't prepare for it. I said, oh, let me just try it, and I went to Delhi, and it was more like being with cousins and getting together. So I didn't study at all. I just went and gave the exam, and it was a surprise when I got through, actually, because I was that day just going into Pilani. The next day I was going to Pilani. All the fee was paid. I was joining, chemical, and I was in waiting in electronics. So it was, my mind was set with that. And suddenly news came that I've got admission in architecture. So, then I realized that, maybe what exactly is this field, and, what are the positives or negatives. So I started thinking, I said, why not, so I really joined it as an experiment, I would say, I just thought,
that's interesting.
Yeah, so it just happened like that. But once I joined, it was something like, now I can't think of my life without architecture.
Yeah, that's interesting to know. So it's like, you just flew with what was coming to you, and it came to you. And as you mentioned, you were already in SPA architecture, and I'm also aware that you also carried out specialization later on after doing your undergraduate. But because we are talking about gender and women in architecture, I would like to really take you back to your college days, and even your postgraduate. You can add your experience here, where in the education often teachers are not making this kind of gender differences. But were you already realizing what is this profession about, whether it is about women or whether women have difficulties, or what is it is going to be, and what next being a woman in this profession? Were you feeling that, or did you experience something, or what was it? I mean, during the course in graduate and postgraduate.
Yeah, during the course, I mean, especially in the graduate time, because the proportion of women used to be very less at that time in architecture.
Yes.
So we had, like in our batch, there were 2 sections, and each section had about 30 to 35 students, and there were only 5 to 6 girls, in
Wow.
the rest boys. So that proportion was very clear that it's very male dominated discipline. But other than that, throughout the course, I did not have any such feeling, that there is a gender issue. I used to feel that, that gender issue was prominent when we would be traveling in Delhi, in BGC buses or those kind of situations. But it was in the discipline, or, amongst my teachers, I never felt.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, in architectural education, it is pretty gender neutral. But what I'm trying to figure out was, were you already feeling what next? Because in your time, you already mentioned that actually the gender balance was not there in the classroom. Whereas in my time, we had, I'm just, I think, couple of years around, or probably the school is different. Maybe that also may change. We had equal number of men and women in the class. So it actually never appeared in the head that there is a difference in the profession on on the ground or in the market, So of course, teachers don't make this distinction, and girls do very well in school. So that also keeps us in that high zone, that we can do everything. But somewhere when we are graduating, things start seeping into head, what next? So what was it like like in your case?
Well, when I started my 4th year, by that time I had clarity that I really want to focus on historic architecture and conservation. So I think that is one aspect, that I focused on, and I just went ahead in my dissertation, and my thesis was very much focused on that, and I was also clear that I want to do a master's, from outside India, just to get that exposure. So I was very much focused on doing that, getting my internship finished, and going for my master's, and I was also clear that I didn't want my parents to fund that, and it should be self-funded. And luckily, they used to have the teaching assistantship. So that was my focus, and I just went to US for my master's after that, in preservation and community design.
So it was straight away after undergraduate, or how was it, or did you work in between?
I worked in between. There was a gap of 1 year because we finished 4.5 years with the thesis, and then we had the training. So my 6 months of training was with the Professor A.G.K. Menon, and then I had a gap of 6 months before I joined my master's. So then that time I worked with Kanvinde, Mr. Kanvinde.
Wow.
So I had 1 year.
That's interesting, because I had a chance to work with Sri Krishna Harlekar sir, who was a Kanvinde's armed office, Interesting. See, when we join architecture, probably somewhere we already start realizing that liberation from the family saying something, and they commanding what we should be doing. Have you felt that during architecture and all, that we can chart our own path and nobody is really pushing us to do this or that? At least I had that situation. They were like, okay, do whatever you feel like. Yeah, from the family. Being a woman, I just want to get that,
Well, I think, I mean, one thing from my family and especially from my father, I kept hearing because, I was going to join Pilani engineering and then I joined architecture. So I think million times he must have mentioned that, if you had joined engineering, you would have finished in 4 years and now it will take you one extra year, so that in the back of their mind, they feel it's a
Yeah,
female
and employment.
and yeah, exactly.
Employment is an important aspect, when we finish. That's where I had this question on what next. This feeling is always there in all of us. If not in undergraduate, because undergraduate, when we are finishing, we are already aiming for a postgraduate, for example. If not, then people are looking for work or what kind of work, that clarity has to come. But if you are into postgraduate, that same situation is going to arrive at the end of the post-graduation. What next? So what was those time, what were you going through and what kind of feelings you were having? Because you returned to India, right? After that, and then you started working. So what was the journey there after the graduate, post-grad?
One of the best part of my life. I mean, I think even architecture was best part of my life in my undergraduate because, the friends you make and you're in the hostel and totally free. And then staying in US was another complete new experience. So again, with a group of friends and traveling. So I was really free and could travel all across. So definitely that time I did feel that women here in this country are much more free, to express themselves, to travel or to do anything, which, in India we had certain restrictions or there were issues there. So, but otherwise it was really like complete freedom, enjoying something completely new, seeing a new country. So I traveled a lot and I learned a lot, and it was, I think, one of the best time of my life. But I was very clear. Yeah, I was very clear. I mean, at one point I wanted to do a doctorate, like a PhD there, and I was thinking of doing it immediately. But then I also joined a job there for some time and worked. But in the end, it was clear to me that if I have to work in heritage conservation, there is not so much in the US. I mean, in terms of complexity or challenge. And I felt that if I come back to India, I can start on my own and really do things that I want to do. Whereas it will be very standardized or molded into a certain thing in the US, there. So I wanted to come back to India also because my parents were here. My brother had moved to US, so I thought at least one child will be with the parents. So it's both personal as well as professional. I felt that India is better for me. And
so where did you return? When did you return?
I went in 91 fall and I returned in 95.
Okay, so and you started office in Delhi, or what was the journey like?
Yeah, just give me a second. I have to mute. 1 second.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you were mentioning that you wanted to return to US. So when did that happen?
No, I mean, I wanted to return from US back to India.
Yes.
That happened in 95. So I just felt, I mean, that time I had finished my education. I was back in, I was working. I rented an apartment, had a car, and was again completely independent, having a nice time. But this is the time when I got back in touch with my batchmate in SPA, who I finally, proposed, and we got married in 95. So that's one of the reasons I got back also. But at that time, I mean, he was also, we discussed and he said that he was ready to come to US because I already had a job, but it was my decision that no, let's settle in India. So I came back, we got married, and then he was in Delhi, based in Delhi. We had, my father had a house in Gurugram, so we just moved here to Gurugram, and I plugged into a job with an architect in Gurugram, and my husband was into his own practice. But of course, we worked for 5 years together in architecture, so we knew each other well.
Yeah.
And later on, we also started practicing together for some time. before we diversified and I specialized. I did my doctorate in conservation, and then I didn't want to do mainstream architecture.
Yeah.
So that was between 95 to 98. For 3 years, I did mainstream architecture, with an organization here, then my own practice with my husband. But between 98 to 2002, I finished my doctorate, partly, in practice. And after doing that, I was very focused on conservation. So I started my organization, Grona.
Very good. So you did your PhD from SPA itself, right?
No, my PhD was from Leicester, UK.
Okay, okay, very good.
Montfort University, Leicester.
Yes.
And this was a very interesting PhD. My advisor was Dr. Adam Hardy, who's an expert in temple architecture.
That speaks already why you are in this field. So you had a very good selection already.
Yeah. So it was it was nicely funded PhD, and I just had to be there in the UK for 6 weeks every year for 4 years.
Okay.
And otherwise, I was doing field study. It was on Havelis of Rajasthan. So I traveled in about 40 towns of Rajasthan, documenting Havelis of different communities and in different cities. So
very good. So very good. So basically, you had an off-campus PhD, which also helped you to not only do PhD, but even start strengthening your own practice, apart from
I was simultaneously practicing. And in Gurugram at that time, it was primarily residential projects. So we were, doing at that point of time about 30 residences, because Gurugram was coming up. But because my PhD was on Havelis, so finally I could get more into academics with that. And I actually wrote a paper on, from Havelis to bungalows to the modern house in Gurugram, and presented it, and the whole, mindset of people, or how even today living in a apartment in Gurugram, how still we have a traditional mindset of entering into a house, doing a Vastu Puja. So all that, like I was linked it to
the Haveli aspirations are also there, by the way, even till date, even if we live in flats and all. Very interesting. So as you are strengthening your office and your PhD got so much more, a clarity about this is the life goal, and you have reached so far and so high in your profession. We all know you, we all love your work, let me tell you that. But still, I would like to know from the background, because you said that you went to so many cities in Rajasthan and you were working on these residential projects and all. I would like you to really share with us some experiences where you either you felt or somebody made you realize in a situation that yes, you are a woman in this profession, or it can be both ways, having an advantage of being woman in some kind of situation, or a challenge. So I would like to hear some experience of both.
Okay. There was one, there were some incidents which were positive, some the other way. Like when I was doing my PhD, because I needed access, my whole PhD was on architectural anthropology. So I needed to understand the rituals inside the house, and, whether it's men or women. And fortunately, wherever I went, I could, in 90% of the cases, get access to inside the house, even in the women's quarters. So a lot of people like who talk to me, later on, even professors and all, they said, you're lucky, you're a woman and you're a Jain. That's how you got access to so many Havelis inside, and you could do your research. So in that sense, it was an advantage. I don't think, a boy would have got access so easily.
No.
So
this kind of project, no.
Yeah. And on the other hand, like when I was practicing with my husband, like we were doing this mainstream thing, and he was also designing houses and I was also designing, and Gurgaon is a small area, and usually it's by word of mouth. So it happened a lot that, the client would come and discuss with us. Somebody had mentioned his name and somebody had mentioned my name to him. And then they came to our office and they realized, oh, they are actually a couple, not different. So at that point, I remember one client actually specifically, she said, no, we want you because you're a woman and your fee will be less. So that was quite an insult to me.
Wow.
That already, they have a mindset that if it's the architect is a man, then the fee is higher and a woman would be charging lower fee. Which of course
It's in
we see
everywhere,
as
everywhere.
yeah, in construction, I mean, the workers, she might be carrying more bricks every day, but is being paid less.
It's everywhere. In our profession also it is like this, and the perception, good that he told you so that it became very explicit. But it's in every profession, I mean, I think now only few professions who are sanitized from this discrimination. For example, the teaching, medical, and now I mean, even some all corporate jobs for that matter, they do not have gender disparity in at least honorariums. But having independent profession is always going to have this distinction, about man, even number of projects. Do you see that difference? Because you are both are still practicing now. Do you see that difference, that how clients approach a man or a woman?
How they
projects, in terms of project type of projects, or more projects, or particular inclination that they want this kind of project, then only they have. Do you see this, or you both have your different client groups now?
Now we have totally different client groups because I focused on Drona and formed it as an organization. Though my husband is still part of Drona, but it's very clear that I am, the main person working in Drona, and he has his own practice, which we started together, direction. So, and his is mainstream architecture, and mine is conservation, museum planning, and world heritage. So it's very different. So the clientele that comes is very different, also.
So are you housed in the same place, physically same place, or you have now different office?
We have the same office, yeah. We have the same office. We have different employees, but they sit in different, like in the same office, just in different sections. And then he has a separate office. I have a separate office, but we share the conference room and a lot of common areas.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So it's a one office, but two office actually. So two different kind of practice. Very good, very good. So do you see that, I mean, you already mentioned that you diversified already because you had an interest in your undergraduate about heritage, which you strengthened with masters and postgraduate and, other, and PhD, and also experience and other things. Do you see the kind of, when you're practicing together, do you come across any competition or complementarity in your work together, or it's now completely clearly defined?
You mean from us from an external perspective, or
external perspective?
Yeah, I think now, it's been so many years that it hasn't really, like, the gender issue is never
in that position. Yeah, that's very good to know, because you are following your passion, and that makes it much comfortable for you to work on. Nevertheless, there are always challenges in practicing this kind of profession. So tell us something about the kind of work. Sorry.
I just wanted to quote an example that I do see sometimes client asking me, because I mean, I really like women or girls who work with me, and I find that they are generally more sincere and committed. Yes. So my organization usually has more women than guys. And I remember in one of the museum thing, one of the client actually told me, he said, okay, we have a meeting here. And, this girl was handling quite well, this architect of mine, for several meetings. But that time he said, if you don't mind, can I ask you, if you have a boy architect, can you send that person? Because, this is such a... So I was really upset. When somebody asks me, I said, no, I think a girl can really handle it well. So
yeah, they are more comfortable. Sometimes clients are more comfortable to open up when there is a boy. Yeah, that is always going to be there in the profession, especially when on the ground there are contractors and laborers and
Exactly.
uh,
On
they,
site, yeah.
yes. So that's part of the game, anyways. But when the client sees woman in the head of the institution, their approach is very different, than having a woman as an employee who is coming and meeting the project's requirements. By the way, even men are also having more women employees in the office for the very reason as you mentioned. So that brings that they are more sincere and they are more hardworking and all. So that brings me to my next inquiry from you. The design and business approach you think has worked for you. In terms of course, I would love to know what kind of work you are doing in brief, but then business approach for a woman entrepreneur like you.
I'm not sure whether I've really thought of a business approach as such, because I mean, most of the time my work is like really something I like. So
Yeah.
I just enjoy and I'm doing that work. And how I started Drona, like the term itself, it has an educational component, which is named after Guru Dronacharya,
Yes.
but it is
Yes.
based in Gurugram. That's why we picked the name, since he belongs to. The whole idea was that whatever we do in practice should also be educational. They should be learning through it, and it develops as an institution so that people who are associated with us later on, are still engaged, and it's learning both ways. I mean, they learn from us. I think even today I learn from the young people who are joining me. So
Yeah.
I think that is the kind of environment I was thinking of. I never really thought of the business part of it.
Yeah, so
but
it's an institution,
course,
like an
as
institution.
truly as an institution.
But otherwise, are you also directly associated with the formal so-called institutions, which we know as academic institutions, or you yourself is handcrafting these new heritage
No,
conservationists?
no, I can't really say that I'm totally into practice or I'm totally into research.
Yes.
There's a balance of research practice, and I can't do, one thing at a, I have to have both.
Both.
So,
Yes.
so I've been into teaching right from the beginning. When I started here with Sushant School, was teaching the bachelor's conservation. For 2 years, I was also assistant professor in Vastu Kala. Then I've been visiting faculty at SPA Delhi, and currently also on the advisory board for UNESCO Category 2 Center, Masters in Heritage Management, and also in the Center for Heritage Management, Ahmedabad University.
Yes.
Now Drona is signing MOU with institutions. So we signed one with Manipal University, Jaipur.
Wow. Yes.
So we've been constantly working with institutions, and I've been into teaching, guiding, even internationally, the RLICC Leuven. We have had interns and I've been guide to them, or given lectures there. Yeah.
Because yours is itself an institution, and then you are collaborating. So that itself is a business model I was talking about. So we move on to the next question I will pose here is about, how do you see yourself being such a successful person? And I'm sure it has come with a lot of baggage of challenges. But if you have to tell the newer generation, like opportunities and challenges of being a woman in this profession, how would you like to say that? From your experience, if you can.
I think, challenges are a lot. Because being a woman,
for example,
no, just being a woman, you always have to prove yourself, that you're equally good, or you have to make double the effort, which probably a man would not have to. So I can't really pinpoint on any particular experience, but it's always there, at the back
in the
of
back
your
of the
mind.
mind? Is it in the back of the mind you are trying to say?
Yeah, it is definitely. And even now, Mansee, I see so many, there are talks being organized or webinars And I sometimes I see only men speakers. This time the
Yes.
Council of Architecture, one of the, yeah. So I just can't stand it. So every time
Yes.
on the social media, WhatsApp, I just comment. I said, why? I mean, there's a
Same
gender
here.
issue there. Yeah.
Same here.
So those kind of issues, even the Council of Architecture election, there was one team this time who stood, which were only men. And I mean, I commented and I didn't vote for them. They actually lost.
Oh,
So
I
I
didn't
mentioned,
even know there was an election from council. We never had council president as woman president, by the way.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We need to
So
have
I
woman
think
president.
definitely, yeah. So I think that is a battle we'll always have to fight,
So
for
it's
some time.
it is there in the back of the mind. That's I think, and despite we may not have faced directly, or we may have faced, which we are sometimes unable to also express because we are in
Yeah,
this kind of setup. But being woman is kind of it's integral, of course, as physically, but mentally also we are carrying that baggage as that we are women and we have to really work hard and prove ourselves. Do you mean to
yeah.
say like that? So which is already, by the way, a discriminative thinking, huh? Because we
Yeah,
are not.
I think somewhere, yeah, you have to be always.
Mm.
I mean, I remember as a child, I had, not that my parents were making any difference, but I heard a lot of times, you are a girl,
Yes.
so that would really gear me up to actually do the thing. If they say you're a girl, don't do, but
So
I would do it.
the rebel.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
that is there.
because
And I mean, just
yeah,
an
please.
incident, like another one I wanted to say that I was designing a museum in Chittor, and the curator there, like we designed, men and women's toilets, and he actually changed the design. He said we don't really need so many women toilets, and the men's toilet was really like big, and he said we get more men out. But I was really upset. I said, no, this is, and it's a World Heritage Site. You have to look at international standards, and women, I mean, you understand, even the children go with them and they need that
Yes,
space.
they need more
So,
space in any case.
yeah. So, in the designing, also, how they compromise, it really disturbs you,
Oh,
So,
it's
that's,
always right from the seat of the car to everything, huh? To
yeah,
the toilets in the
exactly.
airport and office and everything. It is the gender balance is still far, but we have to try nevertheless.
Yeah.
But what kind of opportunity do you see as a woman in the profession? I mean, in terms of contribution, because you are heavily contributing also in this profession. So being woman is also a blessing in that direction. How do you see that in your life and
Definitely.
career?
Yeah, I think one, I mean, women are very good at multitasking, which is sort of established, and that is something that I find in my professional life that has really helped me, like doing multiple things or doing several things and still being structured and organized in that sense. So I
And
think that's
calm,
one contribution.
and you keeping the head calm despite doing this.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely that is there. But I mean, otherwise, of course, I mean, I somehow I also am not really into the this particular idea of just women getting together or just women conferences, because I prefer the balance. I think
Yes,
both perspectives are important
absolutely,
and we need
absolutely.
to.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think it is also to do with architecture education, because in architecture we really had fairly gender neutral approach to do things, from teachers, from friends. There was not much gender discrimination even amongst friends and all. We actually didn't realize that this is a boy or a girl when we were studying. And that helps
True.
a lot. And I think that also makes us more rebellious when we see this kind of skewed thing. I'm also
Yeah.
personally not comfortable if a panel has all women. It's equally bizarre as panel having all men, and
Yeah.
especially when I feel like conservation and environment. I mean, as both of us have our own hats, we
Yeah.
see that these kind of things often pop up with no bad intention, but not thought about by the society or by
Yeah.
the profession. So then people like us are always there to make little noise, and I think that's our that's our side contribution, I will say. That brings me to my penultimate question, and that's the most tricky question and interesting question. And I think after that, these girls are going to ask you very simple questions if they have any. So my question to you is, I want you to imagine a situation. Both of us have traveled a lot in our life in terms of the journey of profession. I want you to imagine how this profession would be and how our habitats and cities would be if we turn the situation and there were more women architects, more famous women architects. Society was, I don't like the word dominated, but more decision makers, more designers were women. What will be the cities like and habitats and society like? I want you to paint that picture for us.
You want me to give my opinion how it would be if that?
Yes. So paint a picture for us, you know, that imaginary.
I'm not sure if, I mean, if we are looking at the imaginary picture, I think we already have some examples which have been quoted across the world, you know, whether it's New Zealand or, you know, Finland or, you know, Germany, where you have the women leaders who have been very successful, and especially in this COVID scenario, how they've managed. So definitely, I think women leaders have, you know, wherever we've seen it, they have fared better than men at times. So I think definitely that would be a positive scenario to some extent. But like I mentioned, that the balance needs to be there. So I really can't imagine more of them and less of, you know. So I would, for me, the ideal scenario would be that it is balanced. But definitely leadership and decision making when it's a woman is, you know, it has proven to be very good. Yet
more designers, more designers and architects in the city, more women. How cities will look?
More sensitively designed, you know, having that care and softness that you so need in the design, which sometimes we miss. So it will definitely be a more human-oriented design, I would say, if we have that.
So please elaborate a little bit on that, because we really want a situation where we have more women architects and, you know, we don't want to demean what is there today, but let us have a situation where there are more women architects and more designers practicing. I did not say, by the way, less men. I said more women. And flipping, I would still like to dream a city or a habitat through your eyes. What will be cities like? Little bit more elaboration.
I don't know if I'm the right person for that, because, you know, I'm usually dealing with historic cities and traditions, and, you know, so it's if you're talking about a new city, but of course, as a designer, I think definitely there would be more details, you know, caring for all kinds, like children and what they need, or what every person needs at different times of the day, or how they will behave. So definitely, I think in terms of public spaces, they would be catering to more level of people than they do now. And that's what I mean, that it would be more sensitive spaces that will be designed. The details would be more like what a person needs at different points of time, or it would cater to that.
Yeah. So you already mentioned the word human. So because I will add one word for you, inclusive, you know, because when women are designing and deciding, they're already encompassing the presence of men, children, trees, other animals in their own design. So being more inclusive and so thank you. That brings me to the last question. But before that, I will request if the girls have any question. Usually we have this as an optional, but if they have any question, they may please pose now so that we can move to the last question after that. Soumya or Anmol, would you like to ask anything? And may show up probably.
Ma'am, maybe I can share my experience working with Shikha ma'am.
Please do that.
Do that.
I mean, I should say it was a great inspiration for me, and ma'am keeps mentoring, and whatever be the situation, like when we had worked in one of the projects in Andhra, I used to have this pressure of being a women architect in the site, but ma'am always was there behind me. She used to keep motivating, and she says, don't give a thing about it, but you can keep showing how much worth you are. And she always was there when the support was required. Be it to, she used to support us a lot, even if she knows that it was we were at a very junior level. She never lets us down, and the client was really jealous about the junior architects being working and giving so much, getting so much of attention and opportunities at the office.
So it's also empowering, huh? So women also have that big heart to empower. Would you like to use that? I'm just putting it in the research vocabulary for my end also. Thank you, Soumya. So we have the little angel, Anmol. Do you have any queries? Because she's just exploring what is architecture as my intern. Do you have any questions?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so hi, Shikha ma'am. Myself, Anmol. I'm from IIT Varanasi. And all these experiences are quite interesting because like I'm just learning how the architects work. And I just want to incline my civil engineering with architectural. So I just want to know one thing, like just when you were saying that you did a lot of experiments while choosing your career path, right? So like ma'am, it like there is something which comes up in my mind that like when I do decisions, I take time as a possibility. I take the things, I do a lot of plannings for my next 10 years. And like as you were telling that how experiments, so can you tell me like how these experiments are good? Like always I feel that yeah, experiment is something that we should try for and we should go with the flow sometime. But like we just start planning and planning, we focus on more planning rather than going with the time. So can you please elaborate this thing with me?
I don't know if I got really your question, but I mean the inclination to experiment is something that you may or you may not have. So one more, if you have that experimentation streak in you, you would always want to do that. Even if you're going in the straight standardized manner, you would just say, why shouldn't I try this? I learn something new from this, you know. So if you have that experimental streak in everything, you would be looking at experimenting or trying it something with more innovative that you can think of. And it's always a learning because, you know, you do it in a different manner, you learn new things and it will help you later. So I don't know if that is what you were specifically asking, whether one should experiment or not, or you can ask your question again, maybe if I have an answer.
No, ma'am. I was just asking the same thing. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Basically, she has to just jump and and take the consequences, I guess. You know, children are thinking a lot, and I guess unless they are in sync with their parents' thoughts, they keep thinking whether they are thinking right or not. So she is in that stage probably. And that also happily brings us to the last question, which is not a question, actually, a message from you to the younger generation to make this profession more gender neutral. You know, and when I say younger generation, it is for both genders. So how can we really work towards making this profession gender neutral? Importantly, you have a very successful career, I'm sure, and a lot of challenges you have faced, which has not come out in this conversation, but I'm sure success does not come so easy. So we are all aware of that. But if we have to focus on really bringing this profession more towards, you know, more respect to both gender, but especially because we both are aware, having spent decades in the profession, that there is something which really needs to change to make it a little bit more gender friendly, gender equal, and who should do what and how it can be done. But maybe we can do something at a younger generation stage where the kind of challenges we faced in our career to reach where we are today, maybe that journey will be little bit more comfortable for the future women architects. Something which you would like to tell both, probably, or any gender or no gender, something, your message to make it gender friendly or gender balanced profession.
I think it's basically we need to listen to each other, respect, have that mutual respect, which is very important. Because what I find in gender exchanges is usually because it's given down from generations, and the way the society talks. There are certain derogatory ways in which they may be, one gender thinks of the other. And if the younger people can get over that and really realize that they are all at equal footing and everyone has to be respected, man, women, or anyone else, even animal or whatever. I mean, there is respect, and you have to listen to them and you have to understand and respond. So I think that is something. Leave your ego behind or any set ideas that have been given to you. Just have your mind blank, take the person for what the person is and his ideas or her ideas in the way they are being communicated. So that's one message I would say, that just be open. I mean, I've had experiences where a lot of people or even friends tell me, no, this person is like this or this person is, but when I'm dealing with, I just first see how that person is in dialogue with me, and I just have a blank canvas, and I give that neutral space to the person to allow. And only then I form my opinion after I've had that experience and exchange. So
then only we can be more open about others, and see through the lens of the human being than he or she or somebody said this or that. So not carrying baggage is also equally important, and have a little bit more openness and open mind, of course, open heart as well. That brings us to the end of the conversation.